Imagine you are building a web application. It starts small, but as it grows, your controllers become enormous. They talk to the database. They run business logic. They format data. They do everything. And nobody, not even you, can understand what is happening anymore. There is a way out of this mess. It is called the model view controller pattern combined with the repository pattern. And once you understand them together, your code will never look the same again. These two patterns are among the most widely used in software development. Frameworks like ASP, Netcore, Laravel, Spring Boot, and Django are all built around these ideas. Millions of applications run on them today, but most developers learn the syntax without understanding the reasoning. In this video, we will fix that. We will start with a plain language explanation of each pattern. Then we will look at how they work together. And finally, we will see the mistake that nearly everyone makes when first applying the repository pattern and how to avoid it. Let us start with the model view controller pattern. It is often called the MVC pattern. The core idea is separation of concerns. That means each part of your application has one job and one job only. The model is your data and your business rules. Think of it as the brain. If a user places an order, the model knows whether the item is in stock, how much it costs, and whether the payment is valid. The view is everything the user actually sees. The web page, the form, the table of results, that is the view. It presents data, but it does not make decisions. The controller is the traffic director. It receives a request from the user, asks the model for the right data, and hands that data to the view. The controller should be thin. It should not contain business logic. Its only job is to coordinate. Here is a simple way to think about it. You walk into a restaurant. You are the user. You talk to the waiter, that is the controller. The waiter goes to the kitchen, that is the model, and comes back with your meal, that is the view. The kitchen does not know how you are dressed. The waiter does not decide the recipe. Everyone has one role. That clean separation is exactly what makes model view controller applications easier to build, easier to test, and easier to change over time. When a bug appears, you know exactly where to look. When you want to add a feature, you know exactly where it belongs. It sounds simple, but it changes everything once you feel it working in a real project. Now let us talk about the repository pattern. At its heart, the repository pattern is about one question: where should database access live? In a naive application, the answer is everywhere. Controllers hit the database directly. Models query tables. Utility functions run raw queries. The result is a codebase where database logic is scattered across dozens of files. If you ever need to switch databases, or add caching, or just write a unit test, you are in trouble. The repository pattern solves this by creating a single, controlled place for all database operations. Think of a repository as a collection of all the objects of a certain type. Your repository for users knows how to find a user, save a user, update a user, and remove a user. Your controller asks the repository for data. The controller does not know or care whether that data comes from a real database, an in-memory store, or a third-party service. It just gets what it asked for. This separation has two huge benefits. First, your business logic stays clean. The model view controller pattern handles user interaction and business rules. The repository handles data persistence. Each layer does one thing. Second, testing becomes practical. Instead of needing a live database to test your logic, you can pass a fake repository, what developers call a mock, and test your controller or service in complete isolation. This is not just a nice idea. It is the difference between a project that has automated tests and one that is impossible to test reliably. So how do the two patterns combine? Here is the flow. A user makes a request, for example, they want to see a list of all orders. The controller receives that request. The controller calls the order repository and asks for the orders. The repository talks to the database, gets the records, and returns them as clean objects, no raw database rows, no messy query results. The controller hands those objects to the view. The view displays them. Notice that the controller never touched the database directly. The view never knew the database existed. The repository never knew what the view looked like. Each layer talks only to the layer next to it. This is sometimes called a layered architecture. In larger applications, developers often add one more layer between the controller and the repository, a service layer. The service handles complex business rules that involve more than one repository. For example, placing an order might require checking the user repository, the inventory repository, and the payment repository. The service coordinates all of that. The controller stays thin, the repository stays focused on data, and the service handles the real business logic. This structure scales. You can add new features without touching old code. You can replace the database without rewriting your controllers. You can test each layer independently. That is the power of these patterns working together. Here is the mistake that catches almost every developer the first time. When you start using the repository pattern, it is tempting to create one repository for every database table. A user table gets a user repository. An order table gets an order repository. A product table gets a product repository, and so on. This sounds logical, but it leads to fragmented logic and bloated code. Repositories should not map to tables. They should map to business concepts. Think about what your application actually does. An order is a business concept. It might involve the orders table, the order items table, and the products table. All of that belongs in one order repository that represents the complete business entity. This approach is aligned with what is called domain-driven design. Your repositories reflect how your business works, not how your database is structured. This distinction matters more and more as your application grows. Start thinking in business terms from the beginning, and you will save yourself weeks of painful refactoring later. The model view controller pattern and the repository pattern are not complicated ideas, but they take practice to feel natural. The key insight is this: every part of your application should have one job, and it should do that job well. Controllers coordinate. Models and repositories handle data. Views display. When each layer respects its boundaries, the whole system becomes easier to understand, easier to test, and easier to change. If there is one thing you take away from this video, let it be this: do not let your controllers touch the database directly. Add that repository layer. Your future self will thank you. Now, a question for you: have you tried using the repository pattern in a project before? Leave a comment and share what worked or what gave you trouble. There is no wrong answer. Every experience helps the community grow.